Dear viewers, this is the second and last part of our discussion about Middle English literature. We have already talked about Jean Baudel's categorization of medieval romance into the matter of France, the matter of Britain, and the matter of Rome. The matter of France deals with the conflict between the Christians and the Saracens. The matter of Britain shows a fusion of Christian ideals and erotic elements and highlights a sense of fate. The matter of Rome provides medievalized representation of the ancient classical world. It also evokes a sense of nostalgia because the world it depicts is a world of lost heroes. The oldest surviving English romance dealing with the matter of France is Otuel. It deals with a duel fought between the supposedly 8 foot tall romantic hero Roland and the Saracen Otuel. The subject was popular and was treated more than once in English romance. Most interesting of the relatively few surviving English Charlemagne romances is the Northern Raif Coilyear. It is written in Scotland and it possesses a Scottish background. The story is a widespread folk tale which has been grafted on the Charlemagne background. It tells of how Charlemagne seeks shelter in the forest hut of a collier who entertains him rudely but lavishly without being aware of his true identity. Later the collier meets Charlemagne at his palace, learns who his guest was and is knighted by him. Of the surviving English matter of Britain romances, the following three are most important: stanzaic Morte Arthur, the alliterative Morte Arthur, and Sir Gwain and the Green Knight. Each of these is an impressive work of literature. Especially Sir Gwain and the Green Knight is one of the great literary productions of the Middle Ages. As regards stanzaic Morte Arthur and the alliterative Morte Arthur, they reveal two quite different aspects of the medieval Arthurian legend. The alliterative Morte Arthur is one of the finest products of alliterative revival. The vigor of its narrative, the epic sweep of its action, and its realistic approach lend it a unique artistic charm. Though the poem is primarily a poem of battles, the poet is more interested in the fates of men than of armies. The stanzaic Morte Arthur is a very different type of narrative. It is a brilliant condensation of the French prose romance of the same name, which along with the stanzaic Morte Arthur itself was the source of Malory's last two tales. The unknown English romancer produced a relatively tight and fast-moving narrative. On the other hand, the French Morte Arthur is a complex narrative, characterized by an elaborate network of episodes and a deeper symbolic pattern, with psychological overtones. The author of the stanzaic Morte Arthur reduced the material of the French source drastically and focused his attention on the action. Yet the author is not unmindful of the psychological element of the tale. Sentiments also play their part, but in a moderate way. These two romances are significant because of their literary value. They are also significant because of the traditions they represent and their impact upon subsequent literature. The alliterative romance is in the tradition of sober chronicle history. On the other hand, the stanzaic Morte Arthur places greater premium on romantic element as compared to historical element. Sir Gwain and the Green Knight is the greatest document of the Arthurian romance literature in English. The story opens with the appearance at Arthur's court of the strange and menacing Green Knight, who asks for a volunteer from among the knights of the Round Table to strike him a blow with a heavy axe. He would provide on the understanding that a year and a day later the knight would come and receive a similar blow from him. The knights are amazed and silent, and Arthur himself is driven to volunteer, but Gwen a model of courtesy, nobility, and courage, steps in and gives the blow. He strikes off the Green Knight's head, but the Green Knight simply picks his head up and rides off, telling Gwain to keep his bargain and appear at the Green Chapel a year and a day later to suffer a similar blow. In the new year, Gwain sets out to look for the Green Chapel. On the way, he seeks shelter at a castle and is handsomely entertained there by the lord and the lady. Each morning, the lord goes off to hunt, and his hunting is described with lively detail. Gwain stays in the castle and is tempted by the lady, who wants him to make love to her. He has a difficult time retaining his perfect courtesy and at the same time repulsing her advances. But he goes no further than allowing her to kiss him. Gwain and the lord have promised to exchange with each other whatever they gain during the day. And in accordance with this bargain, the lord gives Gwain the animals he has killed in the hunt, and Gwain gives the lord the kisses. But on the last day, the lady presses Gwain to accept a memento of her, and he accepts a green girdle which she says will give him invulnerability, which he will require in his encounter with the Green Knight. He says nothing of this girdle to the lord. Then Gwain leaves to find the Green Chapel, which turns out to be a grassy mount nearby. He meets the Green Knight, who strikes him with his huge axe, but deflects the blow as Gwain flinches. He taunts Gwain for flinching, and Gwain replies that he will not flinch again. He strikes a second time, Gwain remaining steady, but again he turns away the blow. The third time the axe lands, but only wounds Gwain slightly on the side of the neck. Gwain now says that he has fulfilled his bargain and demands a chance at a fair fight, but the Green Knight good-naturedly laughs at his ferocity and reveals himself as the lord of the castle. The slight wound on Gwain's neck is for the girdle which he took from his lady in order to preserve his life. Gwain, humiliated, admits his weakness and reproaches himself bitterly, but the Green Knight absolves him and tells him to keep the girdle. On his return to Arthur's court, Gwain tells the whole story, not as a heroic exploit, but as an example of moral failure, and Arthur comforts him, and all the knights agree to wear a green belt for Gwain's sake. Yambodle's third category, the matter of Rome the Great, includes a very miscellaneous collection of stories. There are lives of Alexander in both verse and prose, poems on the siege of Troy, verse accounts of the destruction of Jerusalem, and of course Chaucer's Night Tale. Apart from the last tale, these romances are more important for the light they throw on the medieval imagination than for any special literary achievement. More important for English literature was a fourth category, of which Yambodle says nothing, for it is peculiarly English. This is a group of romances drawing their material from English history. On the analogy of Yambodle's classification, the subject matter of these romances has been called the matter of England, and this is a convenient term. Some of the most popular of the matter of England subjects dealt with in English romance seem to derive from traditions associated with the Viking raids on England. King Horn, the earliest of the extant romances in English group, tells the story of Horn, who, after the killing of his father at the hands of the pirates, comes ashore at Westerness. He falls in love with the daughter of the king, and after doing many deeds of valor, he marries her. King Horn is a good example of the way in which the English romancers left out the courtly element of the French love element is not developed on, and the emphasis is on action and adventure. Another matter of England romance, which apparently derives from the events of the Viking period, is Hevlock the Dane. It is one of the most successful of the simple tales of adventure in Middle English verse narrative. Like King Horn, it concentrates on the physical adventures and plays down the love interest. In addition to the romances of these matters, there are a number of miscellaneous romances dealing with independent subjects. The mid-13th century Floris and Blanchefleur is a pleasing rendering of a popular legend of Eastern origin. It is a story of love triumphant, with Floris following his Blanchefleur to the harem of the Emir of Babylon, who in the end is so moved by the tribulations of the lovers that he forgives them and has them married. The 13th century, when Welsh, Norman, and Anglo-Saxon traditions mingled in England, when Bretons and French influenced each other's storytelling, when mental traffic between East and West had been stimulated by the Crusades and by the journeys of merchants and scholars and pilgrims who took advantage of the relatively long period of internal peace in Western Europe, was a great century of literary cross-fertilization, and Floris and Blanchefleur is a product of such cross-fertilization, and brings a refreshing change from the constant fighting and courtly love-making of the typical romance, and from the treatment of Saracens as conventional infidels which we get in most of the matter of France romances. For Floris is a Saracen, though he becomes a Christian in the end, and Blanchefleur is the daughter of a French widow carried off to Spain by a Saracen king. Floris' father, and the whole setting of the romance is Saracen. Another of the unclassified medieval romances is the fresh and charming Sir Otuel, which shows a different kind of cross-fertilization. Here the classical story of Orpheus and Eurydice has been treated as a Breton lie, and in the process has been changed into a light-hearted fairy story, far removed in tone from the stern Greek myth of Hades. There are other unclassifiable Middle English romances on a great variety of themes, some dealing with the patience and constancy of an abused woman, some dealing with stark courtly situations, some combining history and folklore in one way or another. The 14th century Hippomartin is an especially interesting example of those dealing with stark courtly situations, a translation of an Anglo-French romance. It provides all the standard material of the typical French romantic story. Before we conclude our discussion, a word about the verse form of the English romances. The verse form of the English romances are not always the happiest for narrative. They vary from short rhyming couplets to the complicated stanza of Sir Gwain and the Green Knight. There was clearly a lot of experiment in versification going on among the English romancers. They were learning how to rhyme in English in the French manner and trying out different kinds of stanzas. All the time, Middle English verse is learning to become as supple and assured and polished as the French, and it was Chaucer who successfully accomplished this task. Thank you very much.